Hello and welcome back to Cinematic Venom, and this is 7 Things I Hate About the Buffyverse. You're probably wondering why it's only 7, but I did set out to find 10, and it turns out there's not 10 things I hate about the Buffyverse because it's that fucking awesome! If you're a frequent viewer of mine, you'll realise pretty quickly with all the clips and references that I am a massive fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. No, not the terrible movie, but the classic TV series that spanned from it 5 years later. The story of a teenage girl, played by Sarah Michelle Gellar, destined to fight the undead and protect the world from the ghouls of the night. It spawned 7 seasons, a successful spin-off which had 5 of its own, a very questionable comic book spin-off series, and it continues to be a cult phenomenon to this day. A great show that turned common TV or movie tropes at the time into horror movie versions. A guy sleeps with you and doesn't call you back, well now he's an evil villain vampire. You're addicted to drugs, well now you're a crazy witch on a killing spree who needs help. But since I've pretty much watched this show on repeat since childhood and I know it like the back of my hand, whatever that means, there are still some things about it that does grind my gears. And I'm ignoring what we now know about the creator, and these are just my personal opinions. Certain deaths that fans were mortified to see, I felt needed to happen to further the story. Certain scenes, yes, that one, I feel made sense from a character and story perspective to again progress the story, so I'm not including those. That being said, these are 7 things I hate about the Buffyverse. Giles abandoning Buffy. Buffy is the chosen one, the vampire slayer, and Giles, played by Anthony Head, is her watcher to train and prepare her. However, over the seasons, he really became more than that and treated her as if she was his own daughter.
Your affection for your charge has rendered you incapable of clear and impartial judgment. You have a father's love for the child. That is useless to the cause.
I mean, he even banged her mum a couple of times.
You had sex with Giles?
Which made it that more heartbreaking in season 5 when Buffy's mum dies, and then she sacrifices herself to save her foster sister, Dawn, played by Michelle Trachtenberg. It's a truly devastating scene for everyone involved, and some fans have said that this should have actually ended the show. Season 6 then came along and is believed by most to have been the worst and most depressing season by far. Upon her death, Giles had outlived his usefulness as her watcher and returned to England, but in the first episode, which is a 2-parter, Willow, played by Alison Hannigan, and her friends resurrect Buffy from the dead. Upon hearing the news that she was back, he agrees to get back on a plane and return home, even though he clearly leaves in the evening. They resurrect her in the night, and then they call him and he's apparently landed, but it's a good 8 or 9 hour flight.
It'll be dark soon.
He's gonna head back as soon as he can.
But I guess Joss Whedon failed geography class! He does stick around as Buffy really struggles with readjusting to life, but we find out that while her friends believed she was in a hell dimension, she was actually happy in heaven with her mother.
Wherever I was happy.
Her entire life is crumbling around her. She's struggling financially because nobody wants to help with the bills, even though 2 of the lazy pricks live with her. So what does Giles do?
I can't do this without you.
You can. That's why I'm going.
Why?
Desert me? Abandon me? Leave me all alone when I really need somebody?
They explain that Giles wants Buffy to mature and to be able to do this kind of stuff on her own, but it goes completely against the entire character that he had built up for the last 6 years. He's completely abandoning his daughter figure because he just can't be arsed.
But I should never have left.
No shit, you dickhead. Oz cheating on Willow. The first season establishes that Willow has a crush on Xander, played by Nicholas Brendon, but he's too busy being in love with Buffy, who's too busy being in love with Angel, played by David Boreanaz. It's all kinds of drama. So naturally, it's nice when Seth Green joins the cast in season 2 because, well, it's Seth Green and he's cool.
I mean, you yourself, Oz, are considered more or less cool. Am I?
And he ends up dating Willow, and they're just completely adorable together. It also turns out that Oz is a werewolf, which is nice. Everything seems great until season 3 comes along, when Xander is in a relationship with Cordelia, played by Charisma Carpenter. But now he decides, hey, Willow is hot, and they both cheat on their respective partners several times. In season 4, Seth Green decided he wanted to go off and do movies, and yeah, that worked out. So they introduce a female character named Veruca, who, you guessed it, also turns out to be a werewolf. Now you know where this is going. They end up fucking in a cage. Okay, maybe you didn't know where this was going. You could argue that it's the animal instinct taking over, which is kind of true. He seems drawn to her at several points, and even when they're about to get down and dirty, she's refusing to get in the cage and wants to transform and go and slaughter innocent people. When Oz finds out that she's a werewolf, for some reason he doesn't actually tell anyone despite waking up naked with her before. But he encourages her to get into a cage and she constantly refuses. You could argue that he only did it to protect others and to get her in the cage. He was shagging for the sake of mankind. It's a bit of a stretch, but my issue here is Oz's character wouldn't lie like this. He knows that she's a werewolf and doesn't tell anyone. Wakes up naked with her and doesn't tell anyone. His friends are out hunting a wolf and they know that it's not Oz, and he still doesn't help or say anything. He has plenty of opportunities to reach out for help, so all of that combined with the wolf fucking, it's just out of character for Oz to randomly decide to break Willow's heart for some petty revenge.
I know how it feels. I remember.
Xander and Dawn. You think Joss Whedon is weird because apparently he wasn't allowed to be left alone with Michelle Trachtenberg when she was 15 on set? What if I told you that he admitted he based the character of Xander on himself? And then Xander and Dawn get together! Yes, Buffy has a sister who's only introduced in season 5. There's some monk magic who created fake memories and she's not actually her sister and was only created by DNA. Yeah, Jurassic World will be proud. But she's Buffy's annoying little sister and was universally hated by the fanbase. But at first, she clearly has a crush on Xander. Due to the age gap, Xander at this point was in his early 20s while Dawn was only 15. And very illegal. To be fair, they don't get together until the comics, when she is of the legal age of consent. But I can't help but still feel icky about this whole thing, considering he would have had all these memories of his best friend's little sister since she was 11. It's almost like grooming. Now, you could say that there are some wholesome scenes that foreshadow it.
I saw you last night. I see you working here today. You're not special. You're extraordinary.
But my issue is there's other scenes that are very concerning.
She was hanging out with Spike. I think she has a crush on him.
What?
I mean, I always knew that he had this weird fixation with me.
I'm the one she had a crush on. Me.
There's nothing here. Let's go.
It's always been me. Big funny Xander. Oh, what, she suddenly decides I'm not the cool one anymore?
Why is a 20-year-old Xander upset that a child doesn't fancy him anymore? Angel and Cordelia. The spin-off of Angel arrived after season 3 of Buffy came to its conclusion. As a vampire, he believed that he was unable to provide her the life she deserved and headed off into the sunset to Los Angeles to start a new life in a brand new show. Cordelia followed him, as did Wesley, played by Alexis Denisov. The show took some time to get its footing, but after a while, although not as good, it's still pretty tight. But then it gets weird. Angel and Cordelia end up falling for one another. Ew! I mean, it was already alarming that a 240-plus-year-old vampire who was signed in his mid-20s, so if you really want to be pedantic, he's at least 25, smooched a 16-year-old girl and then slept with her at 17, in a state where the age of consent is 18. I am so shocked that Joss Whedon wrote this. But the whole point of him leaving Sunnydale was because he couldn't be with a human.
You should be with someone who can take you into the light.
Now, Angel is a good vampire who was cursed with a soul, but if he were to ever have one moment of true happiness, you know, nutting inside a girl he likes, he'll lose the soul and turn evil. On his show, he rarely dates and avoids relationships for this very reason. He does end up having sexual relationships with some women he doesn't care that much for, so he doesn't lose the soul. But then he falls for Cordelia, which just doesn't make any sense. It's always established in the show that Buffy is his true love. But this entire thing is moot when he specifically left Sunnydale because he couldn't be with her, just to then try to get with one of her mates. But they didn't actually get together because Cordelia and Connor. Yeah, fans knew this was coming. Around the same time, Charisma Carpenter fell pregnant in real life, and allegedly Joss Whedon wasn't too happy and claimed that she had ruined the show, but he decided to write it into the story in the worst way possible. When Angel had one of his weird one-night stands with another vampire, Darla, played by Julie Benz, she somehow fell pregnant because something vampire prophecy magic. The baby is born when Darla dies in childbirth, but is then kidnapped and taken to a hell dimension before returning not long after, but because the script is lazy and time travels differently there, the baby's now grown to a dickhead. Did you get all that? This prick is called Connor, who the fanbase also hated for complaining about everything. When he was a baby, Cordelia acted as the stepmom, changing him and helping Angel as he was a struggling single dad. But now that Connor's a grown-up, things changed. They needed a reason to write Cordelia off of the show to go and give birth. So they had her become possessed by a weird demonic thing named Jasmine to then seduce her own stepson, fuck him to conceive her own baby so it can birth itself. So Angel would be a granddad and a stepdad to the very same kid. Only for Cordelia to enter a coma upon childbirth and then refuse to come back if Joss was going to kill her off. And then he assured her he wouldn't kill her off, and then she came back, filmed a scene, and then he killed her off anyway. I'm starting to notice a pattern that when an actor wants to leave, Joss just completely sabotages their entire character. Buffy cheating on Spike. The first 3 seasons are based on the love story between Buffy and Angel, but then season 4, yeah, nobody cares about Riley. So then season 5, Spike, the soulless vampire, realises that he's obsessed with the Buffster and has even fallen in love with her. She is naturally disgusted at first, but then he does prove himself, saving their lives, protecting her sister Dawn, and he does manage to gain her respect. And then she dies, the selfish cow. Once she's alive again, he's the only one who really understands how she's feeling, and she confides in him, leading to a whole lot of sex. Like, a whole lot of sex. This also leads to an incredibly controversial scene where Buffy realises she's using him and calls it off. Spike doesn't understand and then attempts to rape her. Unlike most, I feel like this was actually needed. Now, I'm not condoning what Spike did, it's severely fucked up and the scene is very difficult to watch, but from a story perspective, it does make sense. They were fuck buddies, and at one point Spike actually said no and kicked her out, but Buffy didn't listen and did it anyway.
Get dressed if you can find your clothes and push off, because if I can't have all of you, I'd rather... Hey, that's cheating.
But because she's a woman, it was played for laughs. She uses him for so long that the line becomes blurred, and immediately afterwards he realises what he's done and is mortified. He immediately leaves town and earns his soul, something Angel never did, I'm just saying. Once Spike returns with his soul, he's clearly different. He literally walks in on Buffy on a date and doesn't get jealous.
Buffy, I'm all right.
You don't have to.
What? Be noble. I'm not. Really am all right. Think I still dream of a crib for 2 with a white picket fence? My eyes are clear.
But Angel did.
If you can just tell me... Who's that guy?
Just saying. Spike only ever wanted her to be happy, even if it wasn't with him. Everyone turns against Buffy and even kicks her out of her own house. Spike is the only one who sticks up for her.
She has saved your lives again and again. She has died for you.
They spend a night together and it's sweet, but nothing actually happens. The entire 7th season is building up their relationship without the need of a physical attraction. And then in the very last episode, Angel shows up and they randomly swap spit for no reason. No! I get it, it's a first love, but no, you've hyped this relationship so much and you two had your chance. This just doesn't make any sense and makes Buffy out to be a bitch. She goes to see Spike and of course he just puts up with it and snuggles her anyway. And this of course leads to... Spike doesn't go after Buffy. The finale of Buffy the Vampire Slayer ends with Spike finally proving himself to everyone by sacrificing himself to save the world, and Buffy finally admits that she loves him.
I love you.
No, you don't. But thanks for saying it.
However, they completely ruin his redemption because they bring him straight back to life in Angel.
Buffy, is she... She's okay. Where is she? Europe. Last I heard from her. I want to see her. Talk to her.
The more annoying thing is that he doesn't go after her. Now, there were rights issues with the TV stations to the point Buffy was in an Angel episode, but they couldn't use Sarah Michelle Gellar. So they had to use a body double from a distance, and then the comics explained it by saying that it wasn't actually Buffy anyway. It's dumb. But from a character and storyline perspective, it makes no sense why Spike wouldn't go after her. Even just have him leave to go after her and then vanish from the show. Now, at first, when he's brought back, he's not corporeal. He can't leave the building, which does bring a lot of comic relief.
Any more fireworks for me? I'll be in here telling your boss what a miserable bastard.
But then once he becomes solid again, he still doesn't go after her. And the reason he gives is so lazy.
A man can't go out in a bloody blaze of glory, saving the world, and then show up 3 months later tumbling off a cruise ship in the south of France. I mean... I'd love to, don't get me wrong, but it's hard to top an exit like that.
You saved the world! You would do anything for Buffy! You've spent years trying to prove yourself! You would sacrifice absolutely anything for the woman you love, and now you're just gonna be like, I'm back! But I don't want to see her. I wasn't particularly a fan of the idea of bringing Spike back as it ruined his exit, but it did provide a bunch of great moments. Except they completely ruined his character and took him backwards to before he had a soul when he was a cunt.
Well, what do you expect? Out alone in this neighborhood? I got half a mind to kill you myself, you half-wit.
What?
I mean, honestly, what kind of retard wears heels like that in a dark alley? Take 2 steps, break your bloody ankle.
Consider that an honourable number 8. Despite these issues, it's still an amazing universe that I continue to visit every few years or so. My favourite show of all time, an absolute classic, and one that could possibly be rebooted. It's an idea that keeps popping up every few years, and I'm down to the idea if handled correctly, but it has massive shoes to fill. If you haven't seen the shows, I would highly recommend them.